Now we will discuss just briefly Native American religions. I include Native American religions in this study primarily because of their proximity in belief and tribal origins to African traditional religions. Additionally, there can be little doubt that they continue to be a potent belief system throughout the United States and Canada, and thus are very deserving of us taking a look at them. Much like African tribal religions, when you think of Native American tribal religions, you have to think of the spirit world, for the spirit world dominates the thinking of both these religious groups. Native American religions are generally polytheistic. In general, they believed in the number one, Great Spirit, number two, nature as alive with spirits, and number three, Mother Earth. The high God was appealed to only rarely, and usually in the case of great emergencies only. Uh, Native American religions, as you might imagine, are very animistic. That is to say, they believe in spirits indwelling everything, even normally inanimate things, giving life to those items. They're reverential toward soil, plants, trees. There's reverence toward these things, but it varied from tribe to tribe. And like most all other religions, we should not get the idea that there is absolute consistency from tribe to tribe. Uh, that is one of the key features, as we've noted before, of what it is to be a tribal people and hold to a tribal religion. Everything centers around that tribe. And while there may be some very general overlapping conformity or consistency between particular ideas and practices, there's always a freedom to vary, and there is a great deal of variance from tribe to tribe. Although there was generally a belief in a high God, and again I stress generally, a belief in a high, distant God, there was little to no belief that the universe was under the control of any one supreme God, that supreme God actually took an interest, a controlling interest, to the degree that he or she exercised any form of management over the earth or the affairs of humanity. Religious attention was focused on achieving good relationships then with earth spirits, the forest, the streams, and the animals upon which they or the people depended. Thus, not a great deal of attention given to any sort of attention, especially any worshipful attention to this high God. All of the attention, it seems, was focused on those things that pertained to their lives and what it took to keep their lives moving along. The food, the shelter, the clothing, all of the things that were necessary to surviving as a human being. And because they took their living out of the surrounding world, then there was tremendous attention that was given to the spirits that were believed to inhabit and control those things. Sacrifice was sometimes practiced as a way of appeasing these spirits, including some very rare human sacrifice. The taboos, or the hands off items, included menstruating women and the dead. quite often, this taboo was so strong that the dead were not spoken of for years. It was as if they had not existed, except maybe simply in the distant memories of individuals. There was little fear of death among the adherents to these particular religions within the tribes. One either went to a place of joy or sadness, and sin or righteousness had really nothing to do with one's afterlife or destiny. That was all basically beyond the control of the individual, no matter what they did, good or evil. So there was rather an abandonment of any worry over what was produced in one's life for the sake of one's afterlife. Again, the attention was on controlling the spirits, because somehow they would ultimately control that destiny regardless of what was done by an individual in their life. Dance was used often to deal with the spirits and gain control over the spirit world. Particular dances could last up to 3 days. Religious leadership included both medicine men and women. One of the images that one might have with regard to Native American tribes is this extraordinarily strict patriarchal order and hierarchy and control within the tribe. And of course, those things did exist with certain limits. And one of those limits had to do with leadership and the medicine men or women. Women were as likely to be chosen for the role of the medicine person as a man was, because there was often a democratic relationship that prevailed relative to their selection and assigned responsibilities. The primary responsibility of this leadership, men or women, had to do with healing by eliminating foreign objects. And these foreign objects were usually in the form of some spiritual obstruction, something that an individual had done to offend, or a family or an entire tribe had done to offend one or more of the spirits, and then the spirits created an obstruction which kept good things away from that tribe, and they had to be dealt with, and that was a primary responsibility of the medicine people. Tobacco, often 6 times stronger than modern cigarettes, was used to placate the saints, quite often just simply in giving tobacco as gifts in its raw form, or in smoking rounds of this very potent tobacco in honor of the spirits. Today, there are Native American churches that exist primarily in the western states of the U.S., and also some, though not nearly as many, in Canada. These churches, and I put that, as you can see, in quotation marks, these churches are based, their beliefs, their teachings, their doctrine or theology is based on a syncretistic faith, a borrowing of many things, a borrowing of tribal understandings, basic Native American religious understandings and borrowing from some of the other religions that are around them, primarily because we are the United States, Christianity, and borrowing certain ideas and doctrines and then meshing them, thus perverting them with other doctrines that are brought in from their traditional faiths. One of the key elements is the use of peyote. It is used extensively in worship rituals or ceremonies for its inebriating effect and the highs that it provides, which are purported to take one higher into the spirit world and more in communication with the spirits themselves. A church in Oregon some years ago was invaded by state authorities, and its leaders were arrested for peyote use in worship, simply for the use of drugs in their worship. The church fought the case on the grounds of religious liberty, but they lost their case at both the local and state Supreme Court levels. However, in Utah, the same thing happened. The Going into a church where peyote was in use, but the Utah Supreme Court found that all the members of the Native American Church qualified for the religious exemption. Thus, the case was dropped, and no formal charges were ever made to stick, and the church continued its practice, and that set a precedent which has continued to have ramifications for Native American church, as it were, quote unquote, worship in the U.S., as well as influencing a number of other divergent worship experiences and groups and practices throughout the United States. Again, this has been a very minimal view. I wanted you to see, after having listened to the lecture and watched the videos about African tribal religions, the connection that we have with Native American religions, and more than anything else, to see some of the qualities of what it is to be a tribal culture and a tribal people. And even though separated by great distances from the African continent to the North American continent, the existence of the phenomenon of tribal peoples and the consistency between the practices and the cultural qualities of these tribal peoples.